Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Reagan Gruber Moffett. I'm the Vice President of Community Investments. And on behalf of the St. David's Foundation, I want to genuinely thank you for being here today. I know you have lots of things going on, including the important work that each of you do in our community every single day. So thank you for considering applying for the Housing and Health Open Call. And thank you for making the time to be on this call today. So many of you know, if you're here today, that the foundation released a new strategic plan earlier this year called Pathways to Health Equity. And this strategic plan builds on the work that the St. David's Foundation has done for a long time. And it also builds on what we heard from many of you. Over the course of the last year, we held grantee convenings and community conversations and focus groups and one-on-ones and really listened hard to what you reflected back to us about what the foundation could be doing. And we took that together with quantitative data, like the community health needs assessment, ALICE data, and otherwise, and really asked the question, where could the St. David's Foundation have the most impact? So what you see on this slide are the three strategic goals that we've set out externally. One is around access to care, one is around economic stability, and one is around community-driven change. And all of this wrapped together with organizational excellence. So how do we continue to improve as an organization? And while our strategic plan is very much about these goals, it's also very much about how we work as an organization. And as part of the strategic plan, we lay out some aspirations for how we want to work differently. These are things like focusing more of our investments and our actions on the communities with the greatest health needs in Central Texas, even when those are the communities that we know the least about. And I pause there for a second to say, we're not coming today with all the answers. There's really a reason that we've invited you to stay around the table with us. Also aspiring to use more of the tools in our toolbox to continue to address the current needs of our community, but also to think about more upstream opportunities to address some of the challenges in our community. So Housing Plus Health, this open call, is at the intersection of our new strategic goals as an organization and these new ways that we want to work as an organization. Most of our grant making as an organization in the past has been through invitation only, and we work with wonderful partners and excited to have some of those long-term partners as part of this call today. But it's also limited our ability to know who all in community is doing some of the work that we're doing. And it's often meant that we're thinking through what are the solutions instead of thinking side by side with our partners about what the solutions are. So I want to tell you before we get started today that we do not have all the answers. And so with that, I will pass it over to our two facilitators for the day who have some of the answers, but not all of the answers. So hope that you will have grace with us as we learn and work together with each of you as we try to distribute funding to advance these goals in ways that are really new for us and for the community. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Kim and Andrew.
Well, thanks, Reagan, and hi, everybody. I'll just echo Reagan's thanks for your interest in this open call around affordable housing. One of the things that we've been talking to community about is affordable housing in and of itself is really powerful, but where it becomes really powerful is it unlocks a whole host of other important community indicators, whether it's around economic mobility, education, health. So exciting stuff. And we're really, really grateful that you're taking the time to learn more about this call and ask your questions so we can make sure it's the right fit. So my job is just to walk you through just about 4 slides that kind of outline the specifics of the call. So Joycelyn, if you don't mind advancing. Just really quick overview. This open call is one of a series that we're issuing this year. One important thing, if you don't already know this is not the only funding opportunity we've got. There's going to be, there've been a couple more, and there will be more next year. So if this does not really resonate with your organization's priorities, that's okay. There's going to be many other opportunities for funding. But as far as this one goes, this is around Housing Plus Health. And our goal here is pretty simple, but also pretty big. We want to increase Central Texas's capacity to provide safe, healthy, and affordable housing options for low to moderate income households. And I would say that it's important to look at the goal because a lot of the questions that may get asked, we're just going to point back to the goal to be like, if it gets us closer to the goal, then it's probably in the zone. A lot of the questions that we get, either formally or informally, involve, hey, I saw the call, should we apply? Or are we eligible to apply? And so this is just walking through eligibility. And the answer is really simple. If you fit this eligibility criteria, you are eligible to apply. There's no secret password. It's meant to really be as open as possible. And so you can see the eligibility criteria right there. It's also in the call, that it means that you, as an individual organization or as a collaborative that you represent, are operating in one of the 5 counties that are part of our region, Bastrop, Caldwell, Hayes, Travis, or Williamson. You're either a nonprofit, 501c3, you're a public entity, which is a little bit different than what we funded sometimes in the past. So really important, public entities are eligible to apply, or you're using a fiscal sponsor who's a nonprofit. Statewide or national organizations can apply as long as they can demonstrate meaningful connection and impact in our Central Texas region. And this is important, that you have some evidence of working to increase access to affordable housing, again, for low to moderate income families. So here's the eligibility criteria. And if you match it and you have a deep interest in affordable housing, you're eligible to apply, and we'd encourage you to take a look at it. Next slide. And then the other question that we get a lot is, well, what activities can be funded in this call? And in this one, it's really meant to unlock potential to increase affordable housing in our community. So there's 2 main categories that this call is designed to address. One, planning, and the other is pre-development. They're both things that happen very early in the affordable housing sort of stages. And our understanding is, and some of you know this much better than we do, but our understanding is that these early parts of a project or a plan, that early funding is often, not always, but often the hardest to secure. And so we really wanted to come in to be able to unlock potential from good ideas or to jumpstart promising projects. And so if you look at page 3 of the funding opportunities, we give a lot of examples about what are planning activities, but they can be things like convening community, exploring some ideas, or pre-development, which are all those costs that happen before you actually get to construction. So those are the activities that are funded. The population of focus, as I said, is moderate to low income families. Getting very particular, it's 80% or below of area median income is the focus of this. This is an important important thing to know. Our risk tolerance on this is pretty high. Like, we are really interested in unlocking some cool and maybe very new ideas. So we 100% get that all the ideas that get described in your applications or all the projects may not come to fruition. They may not be successful. That's okay. We're really interested in how can we create a process to sort of vet those ideas and really build on community learning. Geography, we've said this before, applications are welcome from all 5 counties. And an important thing is we recognize the challenges in rural areas in terms of building affordable housing are somewhat unique and are going to require differentiated solutions. So please, rural areas, we're really interested in working with you, and don't feel as if just because you can't build necessarily at big scale, this isn't a good fit for you. We're really interested in working with you to try to explore some homegrown local solutions. And next slide. Couple more to sort of details about this call. Maximum award is $750,000, and that award size is really based on the project scale, extent of collaboration, and the potential for impact. If your application happens to be exclusively around planning, as a general rule, the cap for those are going to be about $200,000. Important, this is a one-time unrestricted grant. So one time meaning that You really want to be proposing things that are one-time costs that aren't going to be year over year because it's a one-time award and it's unrestricted, meaning it's general operating, meaning you have full flexibility if awarded to decide how to spend the funds as long as they're consistent with the 5-county area and sort of in service to your mission. The budget that we've got is up to 8 million. And the term is roughly 1 year. The reporting and the participation in 2 convenings will happen in the year after grants are made. And then importantly, we want it to be as transparent as possible about how we're making decisions on funding. And so in the call, we've shared the scoring rubric that we'll be using. And Joycelyn, if you don't mind going to the next slide. And that's the rubric. So that's how we're going to be assessing the applications. When we get the LOIs, and Andrew's going to talk more about those, we'll just be scoring it based on potential for impact. But if you're wondering what we're looking for when we look at these, it's right here. And you can see that there's different weights. So if you look at this, you'll notice that potential for impact, innovation, and collaboration, really, they're the bulk of the potential points that you can get. One tip that we have, and Andrew's going to talk about this a little bit more, but it's probably a really good idea once you've drafted either your LOI or your full application, if you're invited to submit one, have one of your colleagues score this using the rubric, just to make sure that you've put in all of the information to get all of the available points that you deserve. And so that, in a very, very quick nutshell, is sort of the overview of this call. And like we said, we're really excited. I think there's so many cool ideas that we've heard from our community, whether about different planning ideas, whether they're about a specific project, that we're super excited to see what comes out of this. And the folks that are selected will really be kind of a guide on the side, and advisory committee to us as we go deeper into the strategic plan to think about how we really use affordable housing to unlock opportunity and potential in our communities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Andrew, one of my favorite people to work with, just to talk a little bit more about how we're going to be scoring these and some tips and tricks.
Thank you, Kim. Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. And thanks, as everyone said, to your commitment to affordable housing in Central Texas. Joycelyn, if you'll pass this to the next slide, as Kim promised, I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks. So with that, I first wanted to talk about the LOI, the letter of intent. Just give you all a little background on our thinking about why we find that to be a really useful and important strategy. You heard Reagan talk about our commitment to health equity within our new strategic plan. And as she mentioned, our commitment is to serve the communities with the greatest health needs. And this fundamental recognition that those communities are oftentimes communities that we often know the least about. So we really wanted to provide opportunities to hear from those communities, to really opening up our process. We have had open requests for proposals in the past, but a lot of our historical engagement around grant making has been through an invitation only process. And of course, if we're inviting, then we don't know sort of the universe of opportunities to support great work that happens in the community. So this is one opportunity to do that, to sort of level the playing field and really hear from our community about what opportunities and interests are out there. So we're really excited about that change and how we work. And there are a few other benefits around a letter of intent. One is that we actually really value your time, and we want to save some time, both for you and for us, so that we can sort of figure out if there is an opportunity and a match. So by doing a letter of intent, we're asking you to sort of basically answer one small aspect of an application so that we can get a sense, is this a good fit? Does your fundamental idea fit with the goals of this particular proposal? So that you don't have to go through a long, drawn-out application process early on. So with that idea, it's sort of low stakes. So we encourage you to submit a letter of intent. It shouldn't take you too long to answer this one particular question. And we really want to hear from you. So we're trying to sort of lower that bar, create an opportunity for us to engage with you. And then an added benefit of that is, as we mentioned, we oftentimes don't understand the communities of greatest health needs. So we want to hear from you. We want to have some visibility all the amazing assets that are out there in our community. We want to hear about all of the ideas around affordable housing. And as Kim mentioned, this is just one application opportunity, but what this allows us to do is get a better understanding of the amazing organizations that we can partner with, learn about interesting ideas. So there's incredible value in just engaging in the process and letting us learn more about your organizations and your collaborations. So with that, we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about the rubric. Kim noted that there is a sort of broad rubric that the whole application will be assessed on. But for the letter of intent, we'll be looking at the second key issue within the rubric around potential for impact. And this is what will be scored for your initial application question. And if you look on our website on the funding opportunity, you'll see the question for the letter of intent. And I'll just go ahead and read it, knowing that we will be scoring this question. So that what we're asking you to write for your letter of intent is for you to describe your organization or your collaborative's process to explore or move forward system level improvements, test new approaches, or launch projects with the potential to produce new or preserve existing affordable housing, independent of future support from the foundation. And we're asking you to respond, and what's suggested is 300 to 500 words, but there's no word limits, so you have the ability to answer that question in whatever space you need. And that question, that response, will be rated based on these points. 0 points if you don't demonstrate those clear and actionable processes, 6 points if you demonstrate some early thinking around that, and 10 points if you can demonstrate a clear and actionable process to explore or move forward the systems level improvements, new approaches, or launch projects, again, that are with the potential to preserve affordable housing, independent of future support from the foundation. So you can always go back to this rubric. This is what we're going to be looking at for scoring this letter of intent. And this will be the main score that will inform if we invite applicants to submit a further complete application or if we decline that opportunity. So with that, I'll go to the next slide and just give y'all a big overview of the timeline. The call opened 2 weeks ago, and you are here in terms of the webinar. We're actually on the 12th, not the 14th, but we're right there. And what you'll find is that, someone asked, will the slides be shared? Yes, the slides will be shared, and we'll have this recording emailed to you. So anyone who has signed up for this webinar will receive a recording of this webinar, so you can go back and hear from us again, hear our responses to your questions. A real important date is that the LOI is due by 5 p.m. on the 13th of September. We mean 5 p.m. At 5 o'clock, it shuts down. So, give yourself a little grace to work within our grants management system to get it in before that 5 p.m. deadline. And then you'll hear from us in about 2 weeks' time after that, by the 27th. And I guess I would just really want to highlight here that you'll hear from us either way, on either if you're invited to submit a full application or if your letter of intent has been declined. And I say that because if you haven't heard from us, follow up with us, because perhaps, the notification is in your spam folder, check your spam folder, but please feel free to refer to questions at or reach out to anyone at St. David's Foundation if you haven't heard anything by the 27th around your notification. Then after that, you'll have almost a full month to complete the full application process, again, due by 5 p.m. on that date. And then within the next 2 months after that, you'll hear a notification of the application results. And then if an application is approved, the technical amount of time for the funding will be in the year of 2025. As Kim mentioned, it's an unrestricted grant, but the period for receiving the funding and reporting and to engage in a cohort and some convenings around the issue will happen within the calendar year of 2020. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide. Here's the tips and tricks. around the scoring process and submission tips. Just a couple little bits of transparency about the process. Your LOI and the application, if you advance, will be scored by a team of staff here at St. David's Foundation. So more than one person will be looking at your application. We norm around sort of a shared understanding of how we will score those applications, all based on the rubric. So if you're noticing a theme, go back and check the rubric. That is, the fundamental source code for how we assess any application that comes through our process. And so there, as you can see, it is our main decision point. So a few tips. Reagan talked about our strategic plan, and we encourage you on our website, you can access our strategic plan. It really is a guide to this call. Particularly, you can read about our overall approach to health equity, and particularly within Goal 2, you can learn about our approach to economic stability and affordable housing. So I encourage you to look at that, not only to inform this call, but to inform our overall thinking as we advance our work forward. Obviously, read the applications carefully and fully, and particularly the rubric that really goes into detail about what we're looking for to assess your application. And this is what I can't say enough of, is to really say and show your work. We sometimes talk about, I have a daughter who's in algebra right now, and she has to show her work and show kind of how she gets there. And so I think about that with here, that we really want you to say it, to show it, so that we can score it. That is to say how you intend to increase affordable housing capacity through your planning and/or pre-development project, and then show it through detailed descriptions of your activities. You may think that some things might be obvious to us, but they really aren't. You're not sure necessarily if the person who's reviewing your application knows your organization, is familiar with your project. So we really need to hear from you in detail about sort of specifically, what are you trying to achieve? Where are you in your process? What is your vision for this work? And where it sits within that planning and pre-development stage, and to really give us a real sense of that. So can't be explicit enough about really being detailed and explaining that to us. And then if you notice in the call through our website, there's the sort of the website landing page under our funding opportunities page within the website around the housing and health call. And if you scroll down and you keep on scrolling past the initial information, continue to scroll down the website and you'll get to our frequently asked questions. There's an FAQ section there, and it's already populated with several questions, some of which we've addressed based on some of the questions that you sent in already. So that'll be an ongoing updated FAQ section. So feel free to use that and check in on that, and that can give you some clarity. But if there's a question that you don't have answered, and if we didn't answer it well in the next 30 minutes, you can always send a question to questions@stdavidsfoundation.org, and our team works very hard to be very responsive through that mechanism. So that's really the best place. Maybe you know me, maybe you know Kim. You could ask us, but you're going to have a much faster response if you ask questions@stdavidsfoundation.org. That's really our mechanism for being super responsive to your needs. All right, next slide. All right, Joycelyn, it's over to you.
So excited. Okay. Some of these, we're using Zoom Q&A. All of you are on mute because you're all in webinar feature. Use the Zoom Q&A. So these have already been populated. Y'all are submitting questions. That's wonderful. I know we had some chat issues with tech. So if you have, we also have several staff present with us today that are monitoring the questions and answers piece for various things, questions we can answer quickly. And also if you have like a tech issue come up, you can pop it in the questions and answer. That'll be the best way to address it, since our chat is down. And that is my fault because of some settings that I put on. So I apologize for that. And thank you for your generosity. So start submitting your questions if you haven't already through our Q&A feature. As we talked about before, we did get great questions from registration. Thank you so much for taking the time to not only register, but share some of your thoughts. A lot of questions started around call goals. So if you had a question about call goals, hopefully we were able to answer it as Reagan and Kim and Andrew spoke about the goals of our housing and health open call and how it really stems from our strategic plan. We had some questions about eligibility. One of our slides went through eligibility. We went through today. Kim talked about it. We also have it outlined in our website in our call documents. So hopefully we answered some of those. If something else has come up, feel free again to drop it in the Q&A. Timing and next steps. So that was a whole slide here during our presentation of the steps. Starting with, the call was open on the 31st. We're in the webinar. You'll receive the webinar recording and slides next week. And if you have questions, again, that's also on our website and that's also on the call documents. So the next question that we got was around data. And so this is a particular question, and I'm going to toss it to Kim. What unique indicators or data at St. David's Foundation match the funding principles of this award?
And I'm going to answer this in one question, but I realized there was one thing that I didn't
Yeah.
say I wanted to. So while I'm off mute, as you're looking at the application information, I just wanted to call your attention. There's a resources link, and under that, there's a couple resources. But if you're kind of like, no, I'm still not really sure what the foundation is trying to do here, or I have some ideas and I'm curious if anyone else across the country might have done something that's the same or similar, those resources will be hugely helpful. And the very first one in the list is a truly fabulous kind of overview of a lot of really cool things that have happened across the country to spur affordable housing generated by the ideas of local communities. So just wanted to put in a little plug for those if you're needing a little muse, inspiration, sort of at a go for it kick. So those are there. Answering this question, what unique indicators or data of St. David's Foundation match the funding principles in this award? The answer to this is really up to you. There's not one uber indicator that we are using on this. Like for those of you who are familiar with our past strategic plan, for example, child resiliency, everything was aimed towards kindergarten readiness. In this case, we don't have that one singular metric that we're guiding to. We're really looking to the local communities that are working in this area for them to define what success looks like in their particular planning work or their project. So kind of the answer to this is kind of it's up to you to define those, but I'm going to invite either Reagan or Andrew to elaborate if I missed anything. Cool.
Great. There were some questions during registration that were program specific. And so we'll go through these before we hit the Q&A box that people are populating now. So Andrew, can current transitional housing programs with a family violence agency apply for funding?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say about this is it's much less important. I mean, broadly, any organization that's sort of looking at affordable housing for low to medium income families, that is totally within play. The real question goes back to what are we looking to fund in this particular opportunity? And it is that planning and pre-development piece. So that is really the fundamental piece. But any organization, a family violence agency, it could be transitional housing, it could be a range of types of housing, but it really is the planning and pre-development piece for affordable housing.
Great, thank you. Kim, can funding be used to provide rental assistance directly to qualifying individuals?
Yeah, so if you are awarded the funding, it will be general operating. So you'll have great flexibility and latitude on what you do with it. But as we are scoring these, this is a one-time funding opportunity. So when you're talking about how you're going to use the funds, if you're using funds for an ongoing year-over-year expense, it's not a great fit for a one-time funding opportunity. So technically, if you are awarded, you have a lot of latitude, but in terms of what we're looking for projects that are a good fit for a one-time funding opportunity. I will say on the thing of rental assistance, just to kind of seed some ideas, we know vouchers often get unused. And so if you're really curious about, is there a different way to deliver the equivalent of a vouchers that would have a greater uptake, and you want to plan to pilot what that might look like? That's an interesting fit for this type of an opportunity that is general operating, very open to risk and learning. So I think just be mindful, if you're looking for support that is ongoing, this is not a great fit for it because of the one-time nature.
Okay. The next question after that, Kim, does this opportunity support homeless prevention strategies like rental assistance? Would you say those are along those same lines? Yeah, same answer. Okay. Andrew, can the grant be used to implement a housing project that is planned but lacks startup funding?
Again, I might sort of refer y'all to how we're thinking about planning and pre-development. And in the housing call on page 3, on the funding opportunity of page 3, we actually lay out sort of what we really see as planning and pre-development, some illustrative examples. It's certainly not the universe of examples. So I would encourage folks to look at sort of how we define planning and pre-development, because there are some stages after planning where there might be pre-development work that is still moving forward. What we're really not looking to fund is like the construction costs in this particular call. There might be other opportunities where the foundation would be interested in that. But this particular call is looking for planning and pre-development. So there may be some pre-development work that still needs to happen in a project like that. So we would be open to that.
Great. Kim, will funding be considered for transitional housing programs past the pre-development stage?
I think very similar to what Andrew just said. This particular call is about planning and pre-development. It's about sort of unlocking potential. So if you're already past the pre-development stage, this particular call is not a great fit. And like, I just want to be honest, like we recognize that it's hard in terms of timing, and ideally this would be sort of a rolling application, but we are where we are. And so if you've already passed pre-development, like really past it, this isn't the best fit.
So along those lines then, Kim, staying with you, would reimbursement for pre-development costs already expended be an eligible expense?
This is probably best handled on a case by case, but as sort of a general answer, if you're still in the pre-development stage, we would encourage you to look at this and apply. And if you're still in pre-development, then we would be willing to look at what you've already expended. But if you've already exited pre-development and if you know are fully in construction, then it's not a great fit. And let me just, these get a little fine-tuned. So anything either Reagan or Andrew would want to add to that.
The only thing I would tap in is that we're really trying to catalyze efforts. And so to the extent an effort is done, we are not looking to reimburse that happening. We also, as something is being catalyzed, don't want you to wait until literally January 1 to begin any work. And so that's where there is a nuance to this, but I think keeping that intent in mind, that this call is intent to catalyze work, not to reimburse for work that has already happened.
Great. Thank you again to those of you who sent in questions during registration. I tried to kind of bucket them under these big categories and pull out ones that were pretty specific. If you did submit a question during registration and you do not feel like it got answered in this slide, please pop it in the Q&A feature. I'm going to turn to those now and read them aloud and have our panelists answer them. And it's okay, you know, if it was like you tried to answer it, but what I really meant was this. And as we go through this question answer, if you're maybe, want to clarify the question or the answer wasn't sufficient, always open to that feedback. Just, keep in dialogue with us through this feature. Happy to take as many questions as we can now. And also the questions and answer or questions at is a great vehicle if something pops up later. So let's turn to what you guys submitted. So I think I was on Andrew. Andrew, in regard to our eligibility, if one of our initiatives is located in an unincorporated Travis County, is this accessible? I'm sorry, is this acceptable?
Absolutely acceptable and encouraged in any of our 5 counties, right? So Yeah, so if it's, as long as it falls within the 5 county area, we are very open to it.
Right. Kim, would you consider multiple housing projects by the same grantee or applicant?
Can you repeat it again?
Sure. Would you consider multiple housing projects by the same grantee or applicant?
I'm not sure. So whoever asked that question, feel free to weigh in if we're not understanding it. If what you're asking is, can a single organization submit multiple requests, one for project A, one for project B, one for project C? The answer is yes, as long as those are truly distinct projects with distinct budgets and needs.
Right.
And if that is not what you were asking, please pipe up and let us know what you really wanted to know.
Yes. Andrew, how would you view, or how does St. David's view small organizations collaborating with other small organizations for this call?
Yeah, we would be excited and encourage that. You know, as you can see in the rubric, we actually add value for collaborations, and we see real value that, in particular within small organizations who are moving into this space. Part of the idea around issuing a planning and pre-development grant is to sort of allow organizations who are interested in moving into the space, who have some interest, who have some history, to build that capacity. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Great. Let's stay along those lines, Andrew. Can a nonprofit apply with a for-profit partner and be considered a collaboration?
I'll answer that. One sec. Kim was going to say something
Oh,
about.
I'm sorry, Kim. I didn't see you come off mute.
Oh, I was just going to jump in on the collaboration question. Just again, sort of other thing that we're looking for is when you're applying as a collaboration, one of the things we're really interested in is not just, oh, we've come together and we're a collaboration, but what are the unique skill sets that each member of the collaboration is bringing that creates a whole that's bigger than the sum of the parts? So really talking about that is helpful. Sorry, that was what I wanted to chime in with.
An important point. Thanks, Kim. And so, Joycelyn, to answer the question about can a nonprofit apply with a for-profit partner and be considered a collaboration? Yes, absolutely. What we do require is that there is the fiscal sponsor, the agency, the prime agency is a 501c3 in that case, but you could have a partnership with a for-profit partner.
Great. Kim, how many applications will you be awarding? Will SDF be awarded? Sorry.
We don't know exactly how many. What we do know is we have a budget of up to 8 million. And so it's really going to depend how many we get, the quality of them, the size of them. So we don't know yet, but we will soon.
Great. Andrew, is support for a position eligible? So I'm going to interpret this as, can we use the funds to support a position at our organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my answer is yes. You know, think about this. Remember, this will be an unrestricted grant. So if you're doing planning and pre-development work, you can use those unrestricted funds in whatever way that you deem appropriate. I think the other thing to mention, though, about a position is that, you know, this is a one-time grant. So you would simply have to recognize that, you know, if it's a new position, there might be a vulnerability there in being able to ensure that that funding can continue. But certainly, if you have staff time that you want to dedicate towards advancing your planning and pre-development, this would be a great use of these resources.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's stay with you on allowable costs. Is purchase of a housing lot eligible, or is this considered land acquisition and therefore not allowable?
Ask Kim to answer this one because it gets into that pre-development phrase.
Yeah, what we said in the call, and we were pretty specific, is that land acquisition is not considered by us to be part of pre-development. So if you were outlining what you were going to do with the funding, if you were awarded, talking about land acquisition would not be what we would consider part of pre-development in this call. Doesn't mean you can't go ahead and, you know, but it does not mean, I've heard some people say, oh, that means you have to have your land already purchased or secured to be able to be eligible. Not the case. It just means that in terms of pre-development, land acquisition, it would take up so much of the funding that we have available.
Right. Now, if an organization was sort of surveying land, figuring out where the opportunities to land bank would be, that would be a perfect opportunity for this particular problem.
Right. Thanks, y'all. Andrew, can an organization apply individually and also apply as part of a collaborative?
Yes, you can apply for more than one application. You can apply once as a collaborative, and you could do more than one application. We have no limit on the number of applications you could do. You could be part of more than one collaborative. Each application will be assessed independently.
Great. Kim, this organization helps with home improvements and accessibility, so low-income seniors can age in place and others will not lose affordable housing. Is this outside your scope?
Yeah, I would answer it by saying the goal of the project is to create more affordable housing capacity in Central Texas, either by producing or preserving affordable housing. So if it fits with that, then it'd be worth, at least attempting with an LOI. So yeah, if you could describe that as preserving affordable housing, if the families affected are low to moderate income.
Right.
I think, just an important thing is you look at the rubric, you'll see like on potential for impact, like we're trying to weigh sort of needs. Scale is important here. So I would just call that out because the need is so great.
Great. So Andrew, how do we present qualifying costs in the full application? Are they presented in the pro forma, or do we need quoted pricing from vendors or subcontractors?
Yeah, if you take a look at the full application, there's a broad opportunity for a narrative around sort of how you plan to use the funds. We're not asking for a detailed pro forma, and it's really up to the discretion of the applicant to talk about how they intend to use the funds. But remember, this would be an unrestricted grant, so therefore we don't need a detailed budget, a detailed pro forma. We just want to have a general sense of your general intentions about how to use these funds in planning and pre-development. There's the flexibility for you to change that as you need, as long as the general goal is met around your mission for affordable housing.
And on that budget piece, we're not asking for the budget narrative to be able to say, oh no, not allowed, allowed. We're asking it more to understand how deeply and thoroughly you've thought through the steps of your project and what sustainability post our funding might look like. So the narrative is really just the budget narrative is really one more way for us to assess sort of the thoughtfulness and just the rigor that you're putting into sort of either the planning or the pre-development activities.
Great question. This participant also had a second question. So Kim, I'm going to toss this one to you. The last grading criteria awards 5 points for applying as a collaborative. Can you please explain what qualifies as a collaborative? For example, local congressman, Texas Historical Commission.
Yeah, great question. And folks, help me out here, but really a collaborative is more than one organization. We haven't set like a really high bar as to what it is, but so if you're applying as more than one organization, it's a collaborative. What we are looking for though is how that collaborative, the different pieces are coming together to really support one another and create something that's bigger and better than what they could do on their own. And the reason for that, the reason for those sort of points on collaboration is like, affordable housing is really complex. It is hard to do. And so particularly for organizations that are small or new to this, being able to do it on their own, we believe that a collaborative approach is more likely to get traction, particularly for entities that are new, are small, are trying something new.
Great. Andrew, this next question, this organization has purchased land inside Travis County in a town called Mustang Ridge. We're building an affordable housing community, which includes everyone, especially the homeless. We are in the planning stages, but we could use funding for building also. Are any of the funds for construction?
Yeah, for this call, it really needs to be planning and pre-development. So, as I mentioned, we're not interested in funding construction in this particular call, but if there is ongoing planning and pre-development for that site, we would be very interested in hearing about that.
And just to elaborate a little bit on that, is what we are hoping is by making some of these pre-development and planning funds available, it will put projects in a better position to unlock other sources of capital necessary for construction. You know, a lot of times you're like, oh, I can't get that money because I don't have the required assessment, architects, whatever. So our hope is, and one of the measures that we have for our own success in this is that a decent percentage of the projects that we funded have been able to continue down the phase and move into a construction phase because they were able to secure the financing necessary to do that.
Great. Kim, is this call only for physical affordable housing projects or also for supportive programs for housing aid?
It's really not for programs because again, this is a one-time grant and supportive programs are an ongoing expense. I will say that I think we're open to if the programmatic side, if there's some planning you wanted are considering that would make programmatic services more readily available, more able to be financed. I think that might be something that you could look at on the planning side, but the goal for this is really planning and pre-development, not ongoing programmatic.
Right. Andrew, hello, and thank you for this feedback. Will you please elaborate on systems level change and give examples?
Sure, I'll start and I'll ask my colleagues to jump in here, but really, you know, Kim alluded to the fact that in planning and pre-development, we're trying to sort of unlock, you know, other sources of funding. And to the extent that government, that tax credits, that there are large wide systems that can actually help address, you know, affordable housing, public policy. Those are all systems that increase safe and affordable housing. So any planning and pre-development around that work is fundamentally change system levels of making housing more affordable. We're very interested in hearing, and I'll ask maybe Kim and Reagan if they want to elaborate on.
I would just send folks back to the call. I think we have several examples in there, and I think part of what we're not trying to do is to tell you to use these specific examples. But I'll read one off to develop zoning policies that incentivize diverse housing types. So I think we did place a few examples in there that maybe would spark your thinking as you get further into preparing for this call.
And similarly, in the resources document, there's a ton of examples around system level improvements to kind of look at and hopefully be inspired by.
Great. Kim, since funding starts in 2025, does this project need to start at that time or can it begin in 24 and be carried on into 2025?
Yeah, certainly we recognize that as these projects, I mean, this is work that's already happening. So yeah, if the work has already begun now, just as Reagan said at the beginning, as long as you're truly in either the planning or pre-development stage, it's fine.
Andrew, planning and pre-development is a focal point of this RFP. Can you share insights and examples on how planning activities might play out in an existing affordable housing complex?
I'd be interested to hear, you know, from the applicant about, you know, what would be, you know, a next phase and their work around ensuring, you know, increased access to affordable housing through that development. It might be a phase 2 and they're looking at an expansion there. So that could be one idea, but I think that's the fun is for us to ask you, you know, if you wanted to expand affordable housing options, increase your capacity to provide more affordable housing, what would you do? And I think, you know, having an organization having some success and already providing that, you know, is there an opportunity to scale that to some extent?
Great. And similar to the previous question, is funding for case management and supportive services for a permanent supportive housing development eligible?
I think we sort of answered this before. Again, supportive services are an ongoing expense, and this is a one-time grant. So it's not a great fit.
Andrew, is there a chance that this RFP will be issued again next year and/or be made into more sustainable long-term funding opportunity?
Great question. I sure hope so. You know, I will tell you about this about our strategic plan. This is a a very long-term commitment that we have to these goals, and under economic stability, a long-term commitment to ensuring safe and affordable housing in Central Texas. So I would imagine that there will be, ongoing opportunities for all phases of our support for affordable housing. So, I think it raises a great point, and kind of Kim mentioned this earlier, that, at this point in time, your organization or your collaborative might not be completely ready for this, but this is an indicator of values that we have as a foundation, and I would imagine we will continue to make investments similar to this down the road. Reagan, do you want to add anything to that as our fearless leader?
The only thing I would add is that as we started by saying we don't have all the answers, that this is truly a learning experience for us, and we will learn side by side by folks in the cohort, and we will learn side by side by those LOIs that are submitted. So even if you don't move forward, it is an opportunity for us to have a deeper understanding of the need in our community. And as Andrew said, that can really inform for us what are the calls that we offer in the future to ensure that we're really moving forward on these strategic plan goals.
Great. Kim, is the pre-development stage defined as anything prior to groundbreaking on construction?
Yes.
Andrew.
Again, as Andrew has said, if you go on page 3, there's a whole list of examples. So those are all spelled out in the application.
Okay. Andrew, is planning for expansion and improvement for existing organizations eligible?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's similar to kind of what I mentioned earlier, that, yeah, there might be, you may be providing affordable housing services now, and if you want to sort of increase that scale, increase that accessibility, yeah, we would be interested in planning and pre-development around that expansion.
Kim, we have multiple different types of housing projects in various stages of pre-development. Do you limit to one grant to an organization per cycle?
Just as we said earlier, for organizations that are pretty big and are doing maybe multiple projects at one time, we are open to receiving multiple applications from a single organization or collaborative, as long as they're for distinctly different projects. And I'm just going to interject with a little bit of something. I know we're getting like really wonky into like what is and isn't allowable, and that's totally appropriate. But what I would say is, because of the nature of this, because it's one time, because our risk tolerance is high, because it's general operating, y'all, like, have some fun with this. This is a really cool opportunity to take some ideas that have been sitting in your back pocket for a long time and never fully explored or kicked around, because there hasn't been the resources to kind of answer some of the key questions. So go for it, because opportunities like this are relatively rare. So have some fun with it.
Thanks, Kim. The invitation to be creative. I also want to notice that we have about 4 more minutes until 5 o'clock, and we still have 10 open questions. We will continue answering questions. We totally understand that people may have to jump off at 5 o'clock. We're going to try, if we can, to stay a little bit longer, answer the questions we have, and also want to be okay with those of you that have to jump off the call at 5 o'clock. So I do have our last slide, just some reminders about the recording being available next week, where you can post some of your questions, and a lot of gratitude as well for attending. Kim or Andrew, before, we will continue these questions, but did you want to say anything as the 5 o'clock hits?
To all of you folks who need to leave, again, I want to reiterate our gratitude for your commitment to affordable housing and to your interest in this opportunity, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Great.
Yeah, ditto.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go back to our question and answer box and go through some of these. Hopefully we can hit as many as we can in the next couple of minutes and stay on. So I forget who I was on, but I'll go ahead and with Andrew.
I'll go.
Yeah. Will we be able to upload partner commitments and those that are collaborating with us to the grant application, or should we include this in the main grant application? Where do we put that?
Sure. you'll have an opportunity to sort of just let us know if you're a collaborative or a single organization as you submit your LOI, but it is in the full application that you would talk more specifically about the nature of that collaboration.
Great, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that too from a operation standpoint. Like there in the letter of intent, when you go to submit that online, there won't be a prompt for upload documents here. Like there's no upload necessary, so nothing to worry about in this first phase of the letter of intent. Kim, for the purpose of this opportunity, there are pre-development activities like community organizing for resident purchase of a manufactured home community. And could a portion of the funds be used to lower the cost of debt for the residents to preserve affordability in that manufactured home community, i.e. lot rent fees?
I'm sorry, what was the last part you said?
Yeah. Could a portion of the funds be used to lower the cost of debt for the residents to preserve affordability in that manufactured home community, i.e. lot rent fees?
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that right now. I think I would say just go ahead and describe what you're thinking of into your LOI and potentially your full application.
Right. Andrew, will you give greater weight to organizations who have larger budgets?
Not at all. In fact, all you need to know about our weight is in the rubric. So, it's all right there in the rubric. So, that's where the weight will be. It's within those 6 domains. So really look at that. The budget will be based on, the scale of your project, but there's no preference on large or small. We're looking for innovation and planning and pre-development ideas and catalyzing those.
Great. Kim, are funds only for low-income families specifically? I work with a collaborative that's hoping to do some planning around affordable housing solutions for AmeriCorps members living in our region. Their relatively small living allowances make it tough to serve here, even if they grew up here.
Yeah, what we said is this funding opportunity is for low to moderate income households. So anyone falling below 80% of area median income. So that's both the very low all the way up to kind of, low to middle income.
This question is for Kim. In regards to funding and asking for a specific amount in the proposal, if it's too high, will the foundation decide on the final amount that each grantee will receive?
Yeah, great question. We've given some guidance in terms of the maximum amount being 750, planning exclusive, requests being capped out at about 200,000. But we may look at sort of the scope of what's being proposed and award a different amount, a lesser amount. But I would say the most important thing is to not be overly obsessed about how much you're asking for, but really describe what it is that you want to do, the potential for Central Texas, the budget within those guidelines that you're hoping to get, and then we may be making some adjustments for a variety of reasons. But it doesn't hurt or harm you to ask for a different amount, but ask for what you think is necessary.
Okay. Andrew, would efforts planning supporting home buyers like outreach and counseling work to get folks ready to purchase upcoming affordable housing be within the scope?
Great question. A really important issue, particularly here in Central Texas and related to the overall issue of affordability. Given that this particular call is around producing new or preserving existing affordable housing, doesn't seem to fit within the scope, but I want to ask Kim if she has a different take on it.
Yeah, I think I think we're pretty open on this. I think if it's a planning idea that could potentially create a path for more low to moderate income families, having safe, stable, affordable housing, particularly at the LOI stage, is it's a good chance to kind of test your thinking against this. It's hard on these specific things without seeing the overall scope to say yes or no, but that's the beauty of the LOI is, as Andrew said, low stakes, low time commitment to share your idea and us to give you some feedback.
Yeah, and as we said, you can submit more than one idea. So if you want to throw that, out there, it'll have a serious look at. And again, that's also our way to assess sort of the broader ideas that are out there. And that speaks to Reagan's point about us learning from the community about what's out there and what's needed.
Kim, are you going to require 2 to 3 bids for costs for pre-development funds? Replating, oh,
Nice and easy. Nope.
no, okay. Andrew, our organization helps low-income homeowners with utilities, property tax payments, house repairs, accessibility upgrades in order to keep up with the high cost of living. Would funds from this opportunity be allowed to use for these items?
That would not fit well with this particular call.
And then can I just say something on those? Because a lot of these are about, could we do this? That particular thing, because they're ongoing expenses, not a great fit. But if you are planning to figure out a sustainable way to do those things. So if the grant is about planning to look at different systems, look at more efficient processes, and you can outline the plan, outline how the plan, if successful, would create a stronger affordable housing ecosystem for low-income families. That's something to think about.
That gets back to those system level, that the question around system level work. If it's sort of looking at a system level, fundamentally change how that work could look, yes, we'd be interested.
Great. Next question, Kim, is the cost of outreach to neighborhood residents to convene meetings to discuss infill housing an eligible expense?
Yes, and this is a great example of where community input is something that is really, really important and often hard to get because of things like the inability to pay for their time, the expenses, childcare, whatever. So yes.
Great. Andrew, our nonprofit organization spent the last 4 years developing our first housing development, which opens this fall, Live and Make. We are serving a distinct community of artists with disabilities, offering permanent support housing services that are not otherwise available in Austin. Our client community is already pushing for the next development. Is it possible to use planning funds for needs assessments and feasibility or capacity building to see if our organization can even consider doing a second housing project?
Yeah, this is a great example of kind of what we talked about if you have an existing affordable housing development, you're looking for a phase 2, ways to increase the scale. You know, this is that opportunity to think through the feasibility capacity around that. So that would be an idea that would be sort of in line with the plan.
Right. Kim, last question. Would infrastructure costs be eligible, utilities, roads, etc., into a project?
That's a tricky one. I think we would need to learn a little bit more about why that's not. So I don't want to say yes or no. I think we'd maybe take it offline and just raise that question into the questions ad, so we can learn a little bit more about what's going on there.
Right.
But in general, I would think that those costs are so high that the amount that we have here would be really challenging.
Great. Community, thank you so much. Those of you that stayed with us, we got through 43 questions. Wow. What a generous and thoughtful and brilliant community that has those questions for us. Again, so excited you're here. Andrew, do you want to just close us out for the day?
Yes, just again, thanks to everyone. Amazing questions, so helpful for us. Really appreciate the generosity of spirit for y'all to share those, and excited to hear from all of you. Again, any questions, and if you feel like we didn't answer your question well enough, questions@stdavidsfoundation.org is where you go. If you have any issues with our new grants application system, grantsinfo@stdavidsfoundation.org. And just thank you. And obviously, the other thing to do, learn more about the call and the ongoing FAQs within the funding opportunities. And you can learn about more upcoming opportunities around that through our website. So thanks to everyone. Really appreciate your time and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, y'all.